it's Liz Yuille from Old Stables Crafts, and thank you for joining me again today. Today I am going to be making this little project. It's a card that uses the Woven Threads paper, designer series paper, and the Heirloom 3D frames and embossing folders, or it should be frame dies and 3D embossing folders. You get in the frames and embossing folder bundle, you get the oval and the rectangle, and you get both the dies and the embossing folders. They are 3D embossing folders, so and they're the new design, so ideally you need the blue plate to emboss, and then just your standard sandwich to cut, but you want to cut and then emboss. But we'll be going through that, so it's all fine. They marry up really well with our existing oval dies. I will be using the oval die to die cut the Sahara sand piece. But I'm doing paper piecing for her dress, and yeah. So we're using 2 stamp sets. We're using Wonderful Moments and Little Twinkle. Now both of these have carried over from the last annual catalogue, so they've been around for a while, but they are fantastic. This one goes with the Beautiful You stamp set and also a Good Man. It's the same design of artwork, and these images are shown at 70%, so they are, as you can see, significantly bigger. So let's get started. It's not a complicated project. I know I always say that, but it's not a complicated project. So first thing to do is our heat embossing. I have done a little bit of prep for the lady, because we've got quite a bit of stamping to do on her. But we'll start with the heat embossing. And I'm using the sentiment from Little Twinkle, which is Love You More Than All the Stars, which, although Little Twinkle is theoretically a children's stamp set, doesn't have to be. So I've prepared my Sahara sand with my embossing buddy. Then I just need some Versamark ink, and ink up my stamp, and stamp that in the middle of this. This is just a scrap of Sahara sand. It needs to be big enough that you can use the largest of the straight oval dies, just so you know. And then embossing powder, I'm using white embossing powder, and just going to pour that and apparently fling it all over my work surface. Pour that over there and just give it another go. I do like to give them 2 goes in the pot, and then get rid of any bits that are obviously in the wrong place. And that's all I need my embossing powder for, so I can close that and pop it out of the way. Don't need that stamp anymore, so I'll pop that over to the side to clean. And this is where I will get out my trusty cheese board and my heat tool. And you want to make sure your heat tool is hot, and I mean hot, not just mildly lukewarm. And then come in and heat your powder. And as soon as it starts turning, you want to be moving it on, because it will continue to turn just a little bit more once you've moved away, and you want it to have a really nice shiny finish. Which that has got. I'm not worried too much that it's gone a little bit wobbly. It will flatten out, so that's fine. I'm going to leave that just to kind of settle for a moment. And then I've got a piece of Seaside Spray card, and I'm going to take my large oval frame die over to my die cut machine. I'm going to die cut this and this at the same time. Always helpful if you've got the right plates out, which I hadn't. So, pop one down. Now, obviously the frame I have to get, or the stamped image, I have to get kind of central. Always a plan. And then just run that through to die cut. So we've got our frame, and obviously you're going to end up with an oval that you can use for something else, and then our inner piece, and then scrap for that. So that's that, but for our embossing we need to switch out. I had the magnetic platform, but for the embossing you want your standard Big Shot platform, and if you've got the one with the flaps, I happen to be using a Big Shot, I should say, and then you want the blue embossing plate, which I finally remembered to actually order. And then I found that it's easiest to get yourself lined up by going upside down and looking at the middle of your die cut piece, because if this is in the right place, then everything else is in the right place. And then just close it up, and this I will run through my embossing, or through my die cut machine I should say, to emboss it. Now if you don't have the Big Shot, then you'll just have to play with the various shims that you've got with your die cutting machine until you find one that kind of works. But there we go. So that is the beautiful frame that goes with our Heirloom. And then this I'm going to stick behind. Now, when I made it before, I actually used the next size down of this, and it was just too tight, but this will be easier. So I'm going to put adhesive around the outside of my oval, but only just on the outside. I mean, I don't want to come too far into the middle. So we'll just pop that round. You don't need a huge amount, it's not taking any weight on it. And then make sure you've got your frame piece the right way up, and then pop your frame onto your piece of Sahara sand. Hold it there for a little bit just so that it's got a chance to actually glue, and then you can turn it over, and that's the point where I'd probably do that if it wasn't for the fact I had mounted my stamp on that particular block. But we can resolve that with something else, like an ink pad. It's just something to keep everything in place. It's not the end of the world if it's not, because it will become all in place later. So I've got a piece of the blue. I'm reversing the colours basically. So this is the same pattern pretty much as this. So I use this as my background previously and this for the dress. So this time I'm switching round. So I'm going to use this one. I've already stamped my lady on card, and now I'm going to stamp her on to the paper, and I'm going to use Memento Black. You don't actually need her head because that will be cut off. We're going to decapitate her. So I'm going to come, actually I'll come across to this side and just across a wee bit and stamp. And the reason I came over this side was this piece will continue down, and it's not until you've got the dress actually cut out and onto your card that you know where you can trim it off. And then it's just a question of some simple fussy cutting. And I have not done a Blue Peter special. I have not prepared one earlier. So it is going to be a question of fussy cutting. I'm going to start by fussy cutting the dress, and then I will fussy cut the lady. Well, actually I'll stick this onto the lady and then fussy cut round. Right, so I want to come in from a sort of slight angle there, because again we don't know quite where that is going. Cut away the flowers and then simply go up the line of her dress like that. And then this obviously we can use for something else. So I'm going to just stick this onto here and then I'll cut her out. So I'll put the glue onto, whoops, too much glue, onto her. And you just need a thin layer. And just remember, it will squish out a bit. That's a technical phrase, obviously. So you want to stay inside the lines to a certain degree. And then we can just pop that on there. And this is where, of course, I have got, just going to use the end to get rid of the bit that I've done too much on. There we go. And just pop that over there. Press it down well, and then while that is, just cut the little bit of glue off the end, while that's setting I'm going to colour the bits of her that need colouring. So I've got my ivory blend, so I'll colour her arms and her back. So while I'm doing all this fussy cutting and stuff, remember that I've got my product shares available, so I will try and remember to link that video from this video. And you've also still got the extra promotion, so if you've got a largish order, do think about this. This is Rococo Rose. So it's that sort of colour. It dries down a bit, so it starts off a bit pink, and then it does dry down just a little bit. And this is the dark Rococo Rose, and then I'm using Dark So Saffron for her hair. So yes, don't forget extra, which finishes on the 31st of August, and what else was I going to say? Product shares, extra. Oh, weather forecast. Yes, can't forget the weather forecast. So, we are still having a very odd summer here in the UK. It is bizarre. We have had 15 degrees centigrade, which is below 60 Fahrenheit, on some days this week, or last week. We've had high wind, which is what we've got today. We've had pretty much every season of the year, because we've had high winds, we've had heavy rain, and now we've got a bit of sunshine. So I'm hoping that this afternoon, once I've done this, I can go for a run, because I feel very claustrophobic at the moment, because the weather has just not been conducive to doing much outdoors. And yet, although we've had lots of rain, my pots where I've got my plants, and I've got big sort of like half-barrel pots, I'm having to water them because it's so windy that the plants aren't retaining the water. So I seem to be doing pretty much everything I would expect to do in May, and we're in August, for crying out loud. So yeah, we are hoping that, because my husband and I are going on holiday with some friends in kind of mid-September, our hope is that this just means that we're going to get a nice September, because we often do. We often get what we call an Indian summer. So yeah, fingers crossed. That means we will get nice weather for our holiday, because we want to go cycling. So we have rented a house, so if it doesn't play ball, it's not the end of the world, but that's the plan, is that we're going cycling. So it would be quite nice if we had some half decent weather. But yeah, hey ho. So as you can see, not difficult fussy cutting. And as ever, move your piece of paper, not your scissors. Right, so I've got a Sahara sand base. So this is just half a sheet of A4 cut the thin way. I will have all the dimensions over on my website below, and I will have A4 imperial and metric, and I'll also have letter size for those of you who are in North America. Right, I've got my piece of designer series paper pre-cut. I'm just going to pop that on with some snail. Now, quite a lot of this will be covered up, but that's fine. If we use it, we can buy more. That's kind of the deal. So pop that down, find my frame, which is now suitably stuck, and I'm going to pop dimensionals, which are somewhere on my desk. There we go. I'm going to pop some dimensionals on the back, and this is where I can make sure that I overlap the Sahara sand piece a bit, just to make sure that everything is stuck down. And if it isn't, just stick it down. And then I'll pop one in the middle. And then this piece gets popped onto our card. So kind of find the middle and down a wee bit. And it does on the A4 size, it is quite close to the edge. So obviously if you're looking at letter size, it will be squatter. And then I'm going to pop some more dimensionals on the back of my lady. And, I want a baby one to go on her flowers. Now I just want to make sure that I know where I'm going. Okay, so everything else needs to be double depth, because we're sticking onto a dimensional piece with dimensionals. So let me just, I need some more fat dimensionals. Can I find any? Probably not. Oh yeah, there we are. I haven't drawn all over them, but that's fine. So how far down am I going to need to go? To there and there. Okay, so one there, and then one there. And then I can pop a double there, and a double there. And then we should be pretty good to go. So yes, if you're sticking something onto a layer that you've already stuck on dimensionals, you do need to then stick two dimensionals onto the bits that aren't on this piece. Does that make sense? Not sure I'm explaining it terribly well, but and then I just want that to overlap like that. And then from the back, I'm going to grab a reasonably large pair of scissors and just cut once and twice. And that is pretty much there, apart from, where are we time-wise? Ooh, nearly 20 minutes. Okay, so I did stick some sequins, and these are the matching woven thread sequins. And I did stick some onto both her bouquet and onto the background. So you need your take a pick tool and your little sticky bit, and then this has got all of the colours in the pot, so it's got all of the new in colours in the pot. So you just want to pick one up and pop it. You really need to leave your adhesive to dry a little bit longer than this. You want it tacky, which it isn't yet, and you also want a bit of that is tacky, which that isn't. So just take it off and give it a bit of a twist, and it always comes out more than you think it's going to, so go for less rather than more. And I don't really want it that way up, I want it the other way up, please. Thank you. And that one, oh, we've got two there, that's good. These I think are terracotta tile rather than Rococo rose, but never mind. It's the thought that counts. Oh. Now it's better. Right, so let's pop that one there. So that's a pretty peacock. And actually, let's see if I can get one of the bluer ones. Actually, no, we'll settle for this one. And as you see, this has now come out more than I really need it to. So do twist the nib of your take a pick tool gently, because it will keep coming for a little while. And then to keep that tacky, pop your lid on. And there we have our two cards. So, as I say, using Wonderful Moments and Little Twinkle, but bringing in the new Heirloom dies and 3D frames and the Woven Threads Designer Series paper. And that's all there is to it. So thank you very much indeed for watching. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, give it a thumbs up. And I will pop the product share information on my website, so you can link to that, because that's as a post. So I'll link back to that. And do remember that you can place your order for that in the next few days, and then I'll send invoices out ready to buy all the stuff for the 4th of September. Payment will need to be to me before then, so that I know that it's all good. So